evening, everybody. I completely forgotten about today doing a meeting. My bad. Hey, Lily. Clean off my glasses real quick so I can see, maybe. But yeah, I almost forgot about the meeting until the last second. Hi, Ava. Good to see you here today. So I spent some time today fishing. So it's been a good day. Good sobriety day. I'll go ahead and start the meeting here in a minute. And I haven't shown this for quite a while. My Afghan I'm working on. Pink and blue. Thank you.
I don't know if I put your straw in right.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm gonna have to get I think I did yesterday. My lilies have grown so much. They're really tall. They're the tallest that they've ever been. So anyway, I'm Sandra and I'm an alcoholic. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So please be respectful in the chat, no passing judgment on each other. Just because they're in the chat doesn't mean that they are the alcoholic. They might be here to help a friend or a family member. I also always put in the description what book we're reading, the page we're reading, and the story or step or tradition we're reading. And if you want to follow along, that's great. We're reading the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, step 5, page 55. And I get my steps and stuff out of the front of the book. So, but don't worry if you don't have a book, it's all right. I'm going to read it anyways and then discuss things that I do to work my steps or whatever it is that we're reading, how it's changed me and could change you. Anyways, 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching, fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defective characters. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and become willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when wrong, promptly admit it. 11, thought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge, praying for the knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. So, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So we are on step 5. Admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. All of AA's 12 steps ask us to go contrary to our natural desires. They all deflate our egos. When it comes to ego deflation, few steps are harder to take than 5, but scarcely any step is more necessary to long-time sobriety and peace of mind than this one. AA experience as taught us we cannot live alone with our pressing problem and the character defects which cause our aggravated them. If we have swept the searchlight of step 4 back and forth over our careers and it has revealed in stark relief those experiences we'd rather not remember, if we have come to know how wrong thinking and action have hurt us and others, then the need to quit living by ourselves with those tormenting ghosts of yesterday gets more urgent than ever. We have to talk to somebody about them. So intense, though, is our fear and reluctance to do this that many AAs at first try to bypass step 5. We search for an easier way, which usually consists of the general and fairly painless admission that when drinking we were sometimes bad actors. Then, for good measure, we add dramatic descriptions of that part of our drinking behavior, which our friends probably know about anyhow. But of the things which really bother and burn us, we say nothing. Certain distressing or humiliating memories we tell ourselves ought not be shared with anyone. These will remain our secret. Not a soul must ever know. We hope they'll go to the grave with us. Yet if AA experience means anything at all, this is not only unwise, but is actually a perilous resolve. Few muddled attitudes have caused us more trouble than holding back on step 5. Some people are unable to stay sober at all. Others will relapse periodically until they really clean house. Every AA old-timer sober for years often pay dearly for skipping this step. They will tell how they tried to carry the load alone, how much they suffered or irritability, anxiety, remorse, or depression, and how unconsciously seeking relief. They would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects they themselves were trying to conceal. They always discovered that relief never came by confessing the sins of other people. Everybody had to confess his own. This practice of admitting one's defect to another person is, of course, very ancient. It has been validated in every century, and it characterizes the lives of all spiritually centered and truly religious people. But today, religion is by no means the sole advocate of this saving principle. Psychiatrists and sociologists point out the deep need every human being has for practical insight and knowledge of his own personality flaws and for a discussion of them with an understanding and trustworthy person. So far as alcoholics are concerned, AA would go even further. Most of us would declare that without a fearless admission of our defects to another human being, we could not stay sober. It seems plain that the grace of God will not enter to expel our destructive obsession until we are willing to try this. What are we likely to receive from step 5? For one thing, we shall get rid of that terrible sense of isolation we always had. Copper quit. Almost without exception, alcoholics are tortured by loneliness. Even before our drinking got bad and people began to cut us off, nearly all of us suffered the feeling that we didn't quite belong. Either we were shy and dared not draw near others, or we were apt to be nosy good fellows, craving attention and companionship, but never getting it, at least to our way of thinking. There was always that mysterious barrier we could neither surmount nor understand. It was as if we were actors on a stage, suddenly realizing that we did not know a single line of our parts. That's one reason we loved alcohol too. Well, it did let us act expert, extemporaneous, but even Bacchus boomeranged on us. We were finally struck down and left in a terrified loneliness. I asked, when we reached AA and for the first time in our lives stood among people who seemed to understand the sense of belonging, was tremendously exciting. We thought the isolation problem had been solved, but we soon discovered that while we weren't alone anymore in a social sense, we still suffered many of the old pangs and anxious apartness. Until we had talked with complete candor of our conflicts and had listened to someone else do the same thing, we still didn't belong. Step 5 was the answer. It was the beginning of true kinship with man and God. This vital step was also the means of which we began to get the feeling that we could be forgiven, no matter what we had thought or done. Often it was while working on the step with our sponsors or spiritual advisors that we first felt truly able to forgive ourselves, no matter how deeply we felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all around forgiveness was desirable, but it was only when we resolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew we'd be able to receive forgiveness and give it too. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. To those who have made progress in AA, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. Therefore, our first practical move towards humility must consist of recognizing our deficiencies. No defect can be corrected unless we clearly see what it is, but we shall have to do more than see. The objective look at ourselves we achieved in step 4 was, after all, only a look. All of us saw, for example, what we lacked: honesty and tolerance, that we were best beset at times by attacks of self-pity or delusions of personal grandeur. But while this was a humiliating experience, it didn't necessarily mean that we had yet acquired much actual humility. Though now recognized, our defects were still there. Something had to be done about them, and we soon found that we could not wish or will them away by ourselves. More realism and therefore more honesty about ourselves are the great gains we make under the influence of step 5. As we took inventory, we began to suspect how much trouble self-delusion had been causing us. This had brought a disturbing reflection. Hi, Brandy. If all our lives we have more or less fooled ourselves, how could we now be so sure that we weren't still self-deceived? How could we be certain that we had made a true catalog of our defects and had really admitted them, even to ourselves? Because we were still bothered by fear, self-pity, and hurt feelings. It was probable we couldn't appraise ourselves fairly at all. Too much guilt and remorse might cause us to dramatize and exaggerate our shortcomings, or anger and hurt pride might be the smoke screen under which we were hiding some of our defects while we blame others for them. Possibly, too, we were still handicapped by many liabilities, great and small, we never knew we had. to put my straw in upside down. Hence, it was most convenient that a solitary self-appraisal and the admission of our defects based upon that alone wouldn't be nearly enough. We'd have to have outside help if we were surely to know and admit the truth about ourselves. The help of God and another human being only by discussing ourselves, holding back nothing, only by being willing to take advice and accept direction could we set foot on the road to straight thinking, solid honesty, and genuine humility. Yet many of us still hung back. We said, why can't God, as we understand Him, tell us where we are astray? If the Creator gave us our lives in the first place, then He must know in every detail where we have since gone wrong. Why did we make our admissions to Him directly? Why do we need to bring anyone else into this? At this stage, the difficulties of trying to deal rightly with God by ourselves or by ourselves are twofold, though we may at first be startled to realize that God knows all about us. We are apt to get used to that quite quickly. Somehow, being alone with God doesn't seem as embarrassing as facing up to another person until we actually sit down and talk aloud about what we have so long hidden. Our willingness to clean house is still largely theoretical. When we are honest with another person, it confirms that we have been honest with ourselves and with God. The second difficulty is this: what comes to us alone may be garbled by our own rationalization and wishful thinking. The benefit of talking to another person is that we can get his direct comment and counsel on our situation, and there can be no doubt in our minds what that advice is. Going it alone in spiritual matters is dangerous. How many times have we heard well-intentioned people claim the guidance of God when it was all too plain that they were sorely mistaken, lacking both patience or both practice and humility? They had deluded themselves and were able to justify the most errant nonsense on the ground that this was the God, or this was what God had told them. It is worth nothing that people are very high spiritual development almost always insist on checking with friends or spiritual advisors the guidance they feel they had received from God. Surely then a novice ought not lay himself open to the chance of making foolish, perhaps tragic blunders in this fashion. While the comment or advice of others may be by no means infallible, it is likely to be far more specific than any direct guidance we may receive while we are still so inexperienced in establishing contact with a power greater than ourselves. Our next problem will be to discover the person in whom we are able to confide. Here we ought to take much care, remembering the prudence is a virtue which carries a high rating. Perhaps we shall need to share with this person facts about ourselves which no others ought to know. We shall want to speak with someone who is experienced, who not only has stayed dry but has been able to surmount other serious difficulties. Difficulties perhaps like our own. This person may turn out to be one sponsor, but not necessarily so. If you have developed a high confidence in him or her, and his temperament and problems are close to your own, then such a choice will be good. Besides, your sponsor already has the advantage of knowing something about your case. Perhaps, though, your relation to him is such that you would care to reveal only a part of your story. If this is the situation, by all means do so, for you ought to make a beginning as soon as you can. It may turn out, however, that you'll choose someone else for the more difficult and deeper revelations. This individual may be entirely outside of AA, for example, your clergyman or your doctor. For some of us, a complete stranger may prove the best yet, or the best bet. The real test of the situation are your own willingness to confide and your full confidence in the one with whom you share your first accurate self-surveying. Even when you've found the person, it frequently takes great resolution to approach him or her. No one ought to say AA program requires no willpower. Here is one place you may require all you've got. Happily, though, the chances are that you will be in for a very pleasant surprise. When your mission is carefully explained and it is seen by the recipient of your confidence how helpful he can really be, the conversation will start easily and will soon become eager. Before long, your listener may well tell a story or two about himself which will place you even more at ease, provided you hold back nothing. Your sense of relief will mount from minute to minute. The dammed up emotions of years break out of their confinement and miraculously vanish as soon as they are exposed. As the pain subsides, a healing tranquility takes its place. And when humility and serenity are so combined, something else of great moment is apt to occur. Me in AA, once agnostic or atheist, tells us that it was during this stage of step 5 that his first actuality felt the presence of God, And even those who had faith already often became conscious of God as they never were before. This feeling of being at one with God and man, this emerging from isolation through the open and honest sharing of our terrible burden of guilt, brings us to a resting place where we may prepare ourselves for the following steps towards a full and meaningful sobriety. I can say for me, on step 5, it helped me get through step 4, but I also know what it means to talk to a sponsor, talk to a stranger. When I first started going to AA, that was one thing that I did first was I got a sponsor. I didn't know I needed one, even though I had already picked one. And she just happened to be the first person to answer her phone that I called. And she was the third one that I tried. 3 times is, you know. And as I started going to AA, I didn't go and stay at the meetings at first because I was like embarrassed that I had this problem. I had been sober for a while, but I still had this problem. I still thought about alcohol. I still steered myself away from those aisles in the stores. Didn't go into bars, all that crazy stuff. I did that all. But after I got my sponsor and we got to step 5, because I was stuck on step 4, I skipped it for a while. I went to step 5. And it was weird because I got my big book. It was the only book I had, I think it was the first book that my sponsor gave me on my first day in meeting with her. And I don't even know if she was at the first meeting I was at, but she became my sponsor. And I got frustrated on step 4, and I was like, I'm skipping this one for right now. I went to step 5. And I have to tell you, when I was not staying at the meetings all the time, I had my big book with me all the time. I went down in downtown Estacada, of all places, and I sat down in front of City Hall and I was looking through the book. And I was thinking, I am never going to read this whole book. Never. And a guy came across the street. I told you guys about this during step 4 as well. Last week when I was reading step 4. Well, I was reading it and going through it and stuff, and a guy comes across the street from the gas station with the brown paper bag. Of course, I know what it is. And I was like, great, this drunk is going to come and sit by me and want to talk. So I'm drunk. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm, a drunk. And it didn't even click with me that, that was the same issue I have. And it surprised me, though, because I was taught, he goes, oh, you go to AA. They're doing meetings. Where are they? And I told him where they were, and I told him what time and all that. And I said, yeah, step 4, just kicking my behind. I'm not wanting to do it, and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, well, step 11 was hard for me. And I was like, and you're drinking a beer. But I didn't judge him on his drinking that beer, because he sat there and he listened to me about some of my thoughts of AA after only being there for about a month. Maybe it was 2 months. But still, I was talking to a total stranger about my alcoholism. and he has the same problem. And from there on, I decided I was going to go ahead and work on my steps. And I realized after I went through the big book for the first time with the group, which was the only time that I ever read it, I didn't read out loud at groups. I didn't share any of my story in the group. I for birthdays or sobriety birthdays, that is, we decided as a group, we decided that whoever's birthday it was on, before a Friday meeting, then that person, or a Monday meeting, because those were the 2 days that we had our meetings. Then if it was their birthday, then they could do the meeting. They could do all the things that I do here, but in front of the group. And so that was my first birthday. I hosted I did the reading and all of those things, and I chaired the meeting. And so I also, on my first couple of meetings, I learned of service work. What I did for service work, I sat out the pamphlets. That's all I did. Not like they're asking me to do a lot. And so I did that for quite a while. And then I became, um, there were so many different things that I would do. I would go and hang up the banners, because we hang up these things with steps and the traditions on them and all those things, and stand after on meetings to help clean up, and going for coffee with AA members. I have a friend that was in the meetings with me, and then my sister started joining for a coffee after meetings, and um, then we would talk to each other about all of our things that we felt okay to share with those people, and listening to the stories and being able to laugh at some of those things. It does help to have a group to be able to uh, help you cope with not having that alcohol, because once you're sober and you want it for the real reasons, you can stay there, and you can keep your sobriety for the rest of your life. And that's what the books teach you, and that's what going to meetings teach you. Now, I was gonna go to a meeting on Friday, but my sponsor's like, "Hey, I'm not even ready to go, and it's already time to start the meeting." So I went up to her house instead. But I also do my own meetings, and doing the service work has taught me to share my story and share my sobriety and the ways that I have achieved staying sober. It's a daily work. Um, I do still have those days where I'm like kicked off and don't want to listen to nobody, and I argue with people. It hasn't changed every aspect of me, but it has helped a lot. But I don't know where I'd be without AA and my group, and being able to do this here. But it works. And with that, I'm going to read the daily reflection and let you guys go about your day or your evening and your week. And please, if you're not subscribed, subscribe and hit the bell, so you can be notified of upcoming live streams and videos that I post. I do adventures also on this channel, so check those out. But a changed outlook. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 84. When I was drinking, my attitude was totally selfish, totally self-centered. My pleasure and my comfort came first. Now that I am sober, self-seeking has started to slip away. My whole attitude toward life and other people is changing. For me, the first A in our name stands for attitude. My attitude is changed by the second A in our name, which stands for action. By working the steps, attending meetings, and carrying the message, I can be restored to sanity. Action is the magic word. With a positive, helpful attitude and regular AA action, I can stay sober and help others to achieve sobriety. My attitude now is that I am willing to go to any length to stay sober, and that is a fact. And with that, I'll let you guys go and hopefully get my dinner soon. I love you guys. Stay sober. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. Love you guys.